Hello, how are you, and welcome to a new video on my YouTube channel. In this video today we will discuss adverbs of frequency. Adverbs of frequency, ظروف التكرار. Adverbs of frequency like always, usually, normally, generally, often, frequently, sometimes, occasionally, seldom, rarely, almost, hardly ever, and never. All these are called adverbs of frequency. There are many adverbs of frequency, but these are the most important ones. Number one, we have the adverb always. Always is 100%. When I say I always go to bed before 11 p.m., always means all the time or nearly all the times. So always 100%. It is the biggest one. Number two, we have usually. And usually, عادة, it is 90%. So usually, when I say I usually walk to work, so usually is 90%. Number three, we have normally and generally. Normally and generally are 80%. Normally, when I say I normally go to the gym, normally, I normally go to the gym. I generally go to the gym. So normally and generally are 80%. Number four, we have often and frequently. They are the same. Often and frequently. Often and frequently are 70%. When I say I often surf the internet. I often surf the internet. So often here and frequently are the same, and they are 70%. Number five, we have the word sometimes. Sometimes is 50%. Sometimes when I say, I sometimes forget my wife's birthday. Sometimes is 50%. Number six, we have the word occasionally. Occasionally is 30%. I occasionally eat junk food. Occasionally is 30%. Next, we have seldom, rarely, and almost. They are the same. The three adverbs are the same. Seldom, rarely, and almost. They are both of them. All of these adverbs are 10%. Seldom, rarely, and almost. When I say, I seldom read the newspaper. I seldom, نادرا. So seldom, rarely, and almost. All of them are 10%. Next, we have hardly ever. Hardly ever is 5%. So when I say I hardly ever drink alcohol, so hardly ever is 5%. Let's move to the last one. When I say it's never. Never is 0%. When I say I never swim to the sea. I never swim in the sea. I don't do that. All these are called adverbs of frequency. Again, we have always, the biggest one. Never is the least one. Always and never, they are opposites. Always, we have usually, normally, generally, often, frequently, sometimes, occasionally, seldom, rarely, almost, hardly ever, and never. Let's revise again. Look at number one. We have always. It's 100%. When I say, I always go to bed before 11 p.m. When we want to ask a question about the word always, we say, how often? How often do you go to bed? So the answer will be, I always go to bed before 11 p.m. Number two, we have the word usually. Usually, as I have said before, it's 90%. When I say, I usually walk to work, when I ask a question about the word usually, I say, so how often do you walk to work? So how often do you walk to work? I usually walk to work. Next, we have the word is normally and generally. Normally and generally are the same. They are the same. And they are 80%. So I normally go to the gym. When I ask a question about normally, I say, how often do you go to the gym? How often do you go to the gym? I normally go to the gym. Next, we have often and frequently. They are the same, and they are 70%. When I say I often surf the internet, and when I ask a question using the word often, so how often do you surf the internet? And the answer will be I often surf the internet. Next, we have the word sometimes, and sometimes is 50%. When I say I sometimes forget my wife's birthday, and when we want to ask a question using the word sometimes, we say, how often do you forget your wife's birthday? I sometimes forget my wife's birthday. Next, we have the word occasionally, and occasionally is 30%. When I say, I occasionally eat junk food. So how often do you eat junk food? I occasionally eat junk food. Next, we have seldom, rarely, and almost. And all of these adverbs are the same because they are all 10%. When I say, I seldom read the newspaper. And when I ask a question using the word seldom, we say, how often do you read the newspaper? I seldom read the newspaper. Next, we have hardly ever. Hardly ever is 10%. I'm sorry, it's a 5%. When I say, I hardly ever drink alcohol. So when we want to ask a question using the word hardly ever, we can ask a question by how often. So how often do you drink alcohol? How often do you drink alcohol? I say, I hardly ever drink alcohol. The last one we have never, and never is 0%. When I say, I never swim in the sea. So, and when we want to ask a question using the word never, when we want to ask a question about the word never, we say, how often do you swim in the sea? I never swim in the sea. I never swim in the sea. Thank you very much for listening. I wish that you understood all the adverbs of frequency. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, share the video if you like it, and don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you, Mr. Mahmoud Abdul Ghaffar.